Good morning, you guys. I'm just letting people into the waiting room. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to talk, and I'm just going to keep letting people in. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm letting you in. We'll get all dialed in. Admit all. Admit all. I'm trying to get you guys all logged in here. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to talk. I'm fine with that. Whew, it's about to rain here and all my joints hurt. Everything hurts. I ache. You think I was old and had arthritis or something? Today, we're going to talk about emotional support animals and whatever else you guys want to talk about. Figured we'd leave it up for emotional support animals just because we have so many questions regarding ESA animals. ESA also stands for emotional support animal, just in case you guys needed to know that, but that's what we're going to talk about today, unless somebody has something precedent that they need to discuss. I have a question for April. So April, when you have a minute, type me that you're ready, because I have a question for you. I'm getting some questions now. People are trying to apply on housingiskey.com. and they're being told they can't apply until April, the month of April. I think the April 14th or April 15th. Is that for the tenants to apply? I figured since you were all up in this April, you might know. So do they mean the tenants can't apply until April 15th, or are they accepting applications but not processing them until the 15th of April as far as the housingiskey.com money from the federal government goes? I figured April might know because she is like our little money guru right there. She turns over rocks and rent money comes out. It's amazing. So just want to see if April has any feedback on that. Somebody recently tried to apply, and no worries. I'm thinking that maybe the landlord's portions are already claimed, and that they're just letting tenants apply for the 25% starting in April. That would be what I would think. April 15th or so, I think they said. So that's what I think happened, is they've allocated all the funds for homeowners and they're just letting tenants apply. What a day. Are you guys getting ready to get started here on emotional support animals and what you need to know? Because I'm going to teach you my tips and tricks. Stop trying to figure it out. It's so convoluted. It's not funny. The same laws that protect people with disabilities in a wheelchair, things of that nature, are the same laws that protect tenants with emotional support animals, therapy animals, service animals. Here's the way that you can differ between the two. A pet is a pet. An animal is an animal. An animal has no rules, no restrictions, and in your mindset needs to be considered a wheelchair. Okay? And the reason why I want you to associate an animal with a wheelchair is the same laws apply. See how that worked? So if someone wanted to rent from us and they have a wheelchair, can we charge them extra rent for that wheelchair? No. Same thing with an emotional support animal. It's kind of like a wheelchair, okay? It is an assistive device for someone with a disability, just like a wheelchair. And that's how I want you to look at it. So can you charge someone with a wheelchair extra rent? Absolutely not. I mean, that would be some pretty big guns you're going up against. That's not fair housing I'd be afraid of. It's the ADA, the American Disabilities Act. So the same laws that govern people with disabilities and wheelchairs, etc. And I'm just using a wheelchair as an example because it's something we can all relate to, okay? Crutches, any kind of disability, okay? Whether it's temporary or permanent, think of an emotional support animal as a wheelchair and you'll answer a lot of your questions. Can you ask for higher rent because of a wheelchair? No, you can't because of an emotional support animal either. Can you have any special rules for them because they have a wheelchair? No, not at all. Can you ask for an additional deposit because the tenant has a wheelchair and that wheelchair might damage the doorway? No. Same thing applies for an emotional support animal. You can't charge additional rent. You can't charge an additional deposit. You can't have any special rules, and you cannot require them to get insurance. Just like a wheelchair. Is that all starting to click, you guys? Because I want you to start thinking this way so that you'll stop asking these questions. Kind of makes sense, right? Can a person with a wheelchair have any restrictions? No. Same concept, okay? An emotional support animal is a wheelchair. It's an assistive device for a disabled person. Period. End of report. I have a feeling that the federal government is getting fed up with all of these emotional support animals that aren't legitimate. I'll use that word. Let's face it, we all have humans in this country, on this planet, that just want to exercise their right and get what they're entitled to. So if they call it an emotional support animal, they may not have to pay that money. And they're going to use those avenues to benefit them to their advantage. That's what they do. Okay? Take it with a grain of salt. The people that are challenging those notes from doctors and things of that nature are where they're getting in trouble and having those issues. So sorry, I got interrupted with a phone call, you guys. So we want to be very, very careful and very, very cautious that we're not addressing those emotional support animals in a way that's going to cause us attention from the Department of Fair Housing, attention from ADA law. I saw a question come through. Let me see if I can answer it. Do you want me to check LA County? LA City just started their own program yesterday, March 30th. Hey, please, April, be our money guru and help us all figure out where the money is. What is included? Cats and dogs only? No, it could be any kind of animal. It could be a fish. It could be a bird. It could be a duck. It could be a parrot. As long as it's okay with federal fish and game and federal wildlife, animal control in your city and in your county, you have to allow it. Example, somebody has a micro mini pet pig and they're like, this isn't a pet, this is my emotional support animal. Well, here's the thing. The city animal control will not allow livestock in residential dwellings. See how that worked? It's not my rule, it's the city's rule. And unfortunately, if the city's rules are violated, it's us, the landlords, that reap those repercussions. So you can't have any rules at all, not one rule about an emotional support animal. You can't say that they have to be on a leash or they have to have insurance or that they have to do any of those things. You can't have any rules at all. You can't as a landlord. However, you can implement your city's rules, your county's rules, your state rules, federal fish and game, wildlife. So somebody wants a Bengal tiger as an emotional support animal. Yeah. I have a feeling fish and game and federal wildlife may have a problem with that being in a residential dwelling, especially in an apartment community. Some cities have restrictions that they don't allow dogs over 30 pounds in multifamily dwellings. Find out what your city's rules are. Call animal control. Find out, ask them. If you're not getting the answers you want, go to the county, but it could be anything. It could be a chicken, it could be a duck, it could be a bird, it could be a mouse, it could be a rat. You just don't know what the emotional support animal is or could be, and those are your guidelines. You can't have any rules at all. You can't say they must be on a leash when they're outside of your dwelling. You can't say that. But if the city has a rule about that, you can implement the city's rule and tell them that you have to follow the city's guidelines. If the city says you can only have 2 dogs and 1 cat per household, then that's the rule. It's not your rule, it's the city's rule, and you have to abide by it. See how that worked? So when it comes to emotional support animals, the best thing that I could tell you guys is think of it as a wheelchair. You also need to know that a doctor's note isn't required for the emotional support animal. Did you hear me? A doctor's note is not required. It could be from a therapist, a life coach, a marriage counselor. It could be from any professional in the industry aware of the medical condition. With that being said, I know for a fact that April manages property for a living, and that causes her some anxiety and stress. And sometimes she gets woken up in the middle of the night to remember if she did something properly. Well, I, as a professional in the industry, a licensed real estate broker, am aware of her medical condition and her need for an animal. So I can write her the note. See how that worked? Stop challenging the notes, okay? We know half of them are BS. They just don't want to pay the additional deposit and the additional money. This isn't our battle, okay? This isn't our battle and it's not our war. The federal government is sick of it, and they're actually starting to implement a system to put in place for emotional support animals where people are going to have to get them registered, blah, 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 blah. So until that happens, know this, there is nothing out there. There is no database. When they say, oh, I'm registered with, they paid $12 on Amazon. They're not registered anywhere. Do you know why? There is no registry. The only thing that there is Guide Dogs of America. And sometimes those can be miniature horses, just so you know. And they lead the blind. Some people have dogs that alert them to whether they're going to have a seizure or a stroke. Some people have animals that do all kinds of things for them, go and get their shoes. Here's some other things you need to know, and I'm trying to answer questions as I go along. I'm trying, you guys. If the tenant moves in and after that brings an emotional support, are they supposed to tell the owner, or is that a violation? It's a pet until you're told otherwise. So you would serve a 3-day curable breach of covenant for the unauthorized pet. And as soon as they say, that's not a pet, that's an emotional support animal, we need a request for reasonable accommodations on file immediately. The tenant needs to fill out a request for reasonable accommodations to allow them to have that animal in the property. That's what's going to protect you from being fair and even Steven across the board, because you didn't let little Johnny in unit 2 get a pet bird, but you let old man Jones get an albatross in his unit. Why? It's a request for reasonable accommodations based on a disability. That's what protects you from fair housing, from treating everyone the same. So if you come up with a system that's identical and it's the same and you treat everybody the same way, you can't possibly be in violation. See how that worked? Okay. So with that being said, here's one of the tricks I have. People are like, oh, well, it's an aggressive breed dog and my insurance is going to cancel me. I hate to tell you this, folks, but stop saying that, okay? Number one, it makes you sound somewhat arrogant, number one. And number two, your insurance company has to accept the same request for reasonable accommodations that you do. They can't discriminate based on a disability either. So if that person has an emotional support animal or a therapy animal or whatever kind of animal it is, and it's a pit bull, and they say, oh, we can't allow it, all you have to do is give them the request for reasonable accommodations, and they have to make accommodations too. They can't violate the American Disabilities Act. See how that worked? Okay. Lots of questions here. I see a question from Jay Tour. It says pets are required vaccination. How about emotional support animals? It's an animal. What does your city say? See how that worked? You don't have any rules regarding emotional support animals, therapy animals, service animals, guide dogs. It's your municipalities that have the rules. So city, county, state, federal. Got it? You can't have any rules at all. So the first thing you want to get from them is a request for reasonable accommodations and the documentation that they have a disability or a need for this animal. Okay, so you have to allow it. No additional rents, no additional deposits, no insurance, no special rules, okay? The reality is they need to return the unit in the same condition they received it in. So if the animal destroys the unit, then you would charge them out of their security deposit, okay? If that animal is a nuisance, and I'll give you the example. My emotional support animal barks all day because I leave it at home in my unit while I go to work. So I'm going to get another emotional support animal for my emotional support animal so it's not all by itself all day. I've heard that too. Oh my God. If the animal is a nuisance, lunging, biting, striking, barking, mauling, maiming, whatever that animal just tries to do, okay, isn't allowed. It's a nuisance on the property. Can we tell them they can't have an animal? No, we can't. But we can tell them that they have to get rid of that animal and exchange it for a different one that doesn't cause a nuisance on the property because it's affecting the right of quiet enjoyment for neighboring residents. Think about it this way. If somebody had a wheelchair, okay, and I'm going to keep using that as an example because I want to drill it in your heads. Okay, somebody has a wheelchair that has sirens and strobe lights and honky horns, and every time it rolls, it goes wonka, 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 it makes all this noise. Okay, we can tell a disabled resident that they must get rid of that nuisance wheelchair and exchange it for a wheelchair that isn't a nuisance. Okay, we're not telling them they can't have it. We're telling them they have to exchange it for one that isn't a nuisance on the community. Same thing with a caregiver, just so you guys know, if you have that caregiver that's a jerk and you're sick of dealing with them, you can deem that caregiver as a nuisance as long as there's enough paper behind it and tell them that they need to exchange their caregiver for a different one. But I would not, and I repeat, I would not attack any of this without contacting my legal counsel first. And I'm talking about exchanging an animal, exchanging a caretaker. You want to make sure you do that very carefully so that you're in requirement with not only the process and procedure of the courts and the law, but you also want to make sure you're not doing anything that would cost you a fair housing violation. Those are expensive. Okay. So today we learned that an emotional support animal is kind of like a wheelchair. Okay, has the same rules, has the same laws protecting it. Okay, so let me see what else we got going on because I see a lot of questions coming up. Is there a special form to be completed for reasonable accommodations? Yes, requests for reasonable accommodations you can get from the Department of Fair Housing. A lot of apartment associations have them. It's just a request for reasonable accommodations. And let me just give you a heads up really quick. We have two different documents. One's called a request for reasonable accommodations, and one's called a request for reasonable modifications. Okay, modifications means you're changing something. Example, you're putting in a doorbell that makes the lights flash. That would be a modification. A handicap ramp to the door for a wheelchair to get up to the front door. That would be a modification. Remember, a landlord doesn't have to pay for modifications. They just have to allow them based on the disability. The tenant is responsible to pay those modifications. So if the tenant wants all the countertops lowered in the whole house, then the tenant has to pay to have that done by the landlord's licensed contractor, and they have to put it back when they vacate. Just so you understand how a modification works. You're modifying the property to help them based on their disability. If they have a hearing problem, they may put up strobes as far as smoke detectors go and things like that. That's a modification. An accommodation means you're changing the rules. I'll give you a couple examples. Emotional support animal is obviously a big one, but another one for somebody changing the rules for a request for reasonable accommodations. Accommodations is you're changing the rules. Modifications is you're changing the property. Different documents. Accommodations is what we're doing now. We're changing the rules. We're allowing them to have this animal based on a disability. So that's an accommodation. Okay, everybody got that? Don't use the modification paperwork. You'll find yourself lost.
Patti, question.
Yes.
Modification, the tenant has to pay for it regardless how small the amount of it is. For example, putting a little ramp in front of the door. The landlord always has to tell the tenant, you have to do it yourself, or there's a point where I have to do from my own pocket.
No, a landlord does not have to do the request for reasonable modifications out of their own pocket. That falls on the tenant. Okay, you got that? Are you gone now? Okay, okay. So modifications, and let's go backwards again, and it's just for clarity, means we're modifying the property. We're lowering the countertops, widening the door frames, installing flashing smoke detectors and flashing doorbell. That's a modification. Those expenses fall on the tenant, and they have to be done according to the landlord's specifications. So you as the landlord are going to say, of course I'll allow this. You sign, yes, I'm allowing it. And here's the name of the contractor that you need to hire to put it in there. So you have some control over who's doing the work. Because you don't want just anybody trying to install a ramp. God knows, you don't want me to do it. It would be bad. I got some cardboard. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So modification, tenant pays for. Accommodation changes the rules. Let me give you another example of an accommodation just so that you guys get it. Let's say your tenant's on Social Security disability and they get their check every month on the 12th. They're asking you for an accommodation to change their rules based on when their income comes in. That would be a request for reasonable accommodations. Okay, so we use those requests for reasonable accommodations every time we change the rules for someone, based on their disability, based on their need, etc. That way, if fair housing comes through and says, well, you have all these emotional support animals, but you don't have one request for a reasonable accommodation, how come Johnny can't have a pet? Now you're discriminating. See how that worked? So that request for reasonable accommodations, having that in your file is what saves your rear end from fair housing, stating that you are actually discriminating against a disability, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. Discrimination against a disability. That's an emotional support animal. That comes with really big teeth, really big lawsuits, and I don't want any part of that. I mean, wow, ouch, that one's going to hurt. Seriously. So be very, very cautious and very, very careful that you're addressing an emotional support animal the same way you would of someone being in a wheelchair. I saw another question come through. Let me see if I can grab it. Hang on. You can make modifications only if the tenant makes a request. Let me read that again because I'm not getting the question. You can make modifications only if the tenant makes a request. Are you talking about a request for reasonable modifications, meaning they want flashes or strobes put in because they're hard of hearing and they need to know if somebody's at their door? What are we talking about? Please give me some clarity so that I can help answer your question or confirm your statement. Yes. I like that. Yes. So a tenant is responsible for paying the expense for a reasonable modification. And I'll tell you right now, don't try to deny it. What's reasonable to a court of law versus what's actually reasonable to us as a landlord might not be reasonable. So there is a dollar amount on there, just so you guys know. And this is why I tell you, just allow them to do the modification, blah, blah, blah. If it's over $10,000, then the court might say it's unreasonable. But anything under $10,000 usually is reasonable in the eyes of the court for an expense on the owner, just so that you're aware. So that can be a little tricky too. I saw another thing come through. Let's see what this one says. It says yes. But remember, emotional support animal can be anything. It could be a lizard. It could be a duck. It could be a cat, a dog, a kangaroo. federal Fish and Game is not gonna allow a kangaroo or a Bengal tiger to be in a residential dwelling within city limits. Let's face it. So that's the recourse that we have, is they have to follow the guidelines of our municipalities. Our municipalities are the laws that govern us. So the county's law, the city's law, the state's law, the federal laws, if they're in compliant with all of that, you have to allow it. It's that simple, with no additional expenses or increases to the tenant. This is why I make all my tenants get liability insurance as a requirement, because then everybody's required to have renter's insurance with the liability on there, which may help me in the event that emotional support animal bites someone. But I make everybody get insurance. Doesn't matter if you have an animal or not. See how that worked? I'm treating everyone the same. So that's one of my tricks for you for emotional support animals. Just require everybody to get liability insurance and have renter's insurance. That way, if that animal does something, you should be listed as an additional insured or interested party and have the capability of opening a claim for them. See how that worked? Hi. So having your, yes.
Modification, but once it's done, the tenant pays for it, it's done. When the tenant moves out, who is gonna reverse it if it's needed?
The tenant. That falls on the tenant.
Okay.
Okay. As long as you have all your paperwork in order for the request for reasonable modification, all of that should fall on the tenant to return the unit in the original condition of which it was received. And any modifications should be reversed.
Well, otherwise you can take it out after deposit, supposedly.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hello, Patty, can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see you too. Hi.
Okay, how you doing? I have a tenant that's requesting to have a privacy fence put around the certain parts of the yard because of the incidents that we're having with previous neighbors. It's an agricultural area, so there's chickens, pigs, you name it.
What's a privacy fence gonna do?
She's claiming it's annoying her dogs. The dogs are always barking, which eventually going to be a problem for the other tenants. Help me out here.
I'm absorbing what you're telling me. What city is this in?
This is in Hesperia.
Okay, I'm very familiar with the area. I actually live in Apple Valley.
Okay.
So is this in a multifamily community? I'm going to say like a duplex.
No, it says single family residence.
Okay, and she's requesting a fence be put up to enclose her dogs, or a fence be put up to keep other things out?
Well, she's requesting that. Yes, I see. Okay, what she's requesting is that privacy fencing is installed around certain areas of the yard to prevent her dogs from seeing the chickens and into, when they interact with the chickens and the pigs, they go crazy. There's a lot of barking and dogs start digging holes under the fence to get to them.
So if she'd like to put in a request for reasonable modifications to the property to accommodate her disability, then you can allow it. You don't have to allow this.
Okay, I just want to make sure about that.
I mean, come on, I want a jacuzzi. Are you gonna give me one?
Okay, but what's the backlash on that when the other neighbors are complaining about her dogs?
Her dogs are a nuisance.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you have to rebuild your house to accommodate someone. You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Could you allow her?
So the responsibility is not on me, it's on her.
It's on her, but at the same time, you can allow the modification or deny the modification. This isn't based on a disability, so we're talking about something entirely different.
Yes. Okay.
So it's up to you. And this is what I would do if it were me, and this is just me talking out loud. I'd be more than happy to give you permission to put up a fence at your expense.
Okay.
Because once she finds out she has to pay for it, she's probably gonna move. And with that, your problem goes away. Just saying. I don't know of our tenant, and I do have to correct myself. I've known of a tenant that actually remodeled an entire house for me at their expense. I let her live there
Oh, I
for
have a
4.
few of them.
Yeah, I mean, they put
I have
in
a few.
hardwood floors, redid the countertops and granite at their expense. I let them. I waited 4 years and then I sold the house and kept the profit. Hey.
No, I have a few tenants that like that are like that. It's just the quality of the way they want to live. Yeah, and I have no problem with that at their expense.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Okay, but if you want to allow them to put up this fence, then I would just tell them, I have no problem allowing you to do that at your expense. You do need to remove it when you vacate. Or we can talk about you reversing it when you vacate. Because if it's nice, you may want to leave it there if it's an upgrade to your property.
Right. It's a be a
Why,
win-win.
if they're upgrading it and it's good, then why make them take it down? That doesn't make sense. They helped you. Thank them. All right, I saw another question come through. Let me grab that one. If I have different rules for different single family homes, is this discrimination? Could be. I'm going to ask you more questions about it. In California, I think 6 marijuana plants are allowed in the backyard. Can I say it's not allowed? You can have non-agriculture disclosure, and I'll say that again because it's a tongue twister, a non-agriculture disclosure, basically forbidding them from growing anything on the property, including an avocado pit in the windowsill. I know in a lot of multifamily communities, we have a lot of problems with, we'll just call them green thumbers. Okay. They have various potted plants, and before you know it, their unit looks like a jungle in the front yard. And now your gardener is trying to go around and deal with, no, that's no, I pay a gardener. I don't need your help. We don't need to redo the whole front of the building so it looks like a nursery. So there is a document that you can use. It is a non-agriculture disclosure. It doesn't allow them to grow anything on the property, anything, including an avocado pit and a windowsill. So you have to be very strict if you use that document that they aren't to plant anything in the yard. They're to have no house plants and they're to have no exterior plants. And the reality is, you have a whole bunch of plants, you usually end up with some water damage somewhere, whether a plant falls over and spills on the carpet and makes a mud puddle, or on wood floor, it warps the flooring. So when you have indoor plants, believe it or not, they do cause damage. A lot of it we don't see until the tenants vacate and they didn't even know what was going on. So indoor plants do cause more damage. Outdoor plants cause you more trouble than anything else, because then all your units don't look uniform anymore. You got the jungle in front of unit 202 and you got the, so I just highly discourage it. If you're in a multifamily community, non-agriculture disclosure is probably the better route to go. You can use that on single family residents, but it's extremely, I wouldn't live there if you had a non-agriculture disclosure on a single family residence. It's going to deter some tenants. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just, I like to grow some of my own herbs. I like fresh herbs and things in my cooking. So I want a fresh herb garden in my unit. And if you're not going to allow that, I won't live there. So it does have some downfalls, but you didn't want me as your tenant anyway. I know too much. Nobody would ever rent to me, okay? Ever. So we talked about not having any rules with emotional support animals. One of the things that you need to know the most is the leash thing. Everybody says, and it's all in their paperwork and their rules, if the animal's outside of your unit, you must have it confined in a carrier or on a leash. You can't have that rule. Only the city can, the county can. So if there's no leash law in your city, you can't implement it at your community. Make sense? Yes, I hope so. You can't have any rules. You cannot have any rules, okay? No restrictions based on that disability. The other thing that I wanted, Oh, we have another question, David, go ahead.
Okay, yes, please. Regarding reasonable accommodation, if I agree to it, could I just verbally agree to it, or I must fill out the form?
I would fill out that form because that's what's going to save your butt if Fair Housing starts saying you're discriminating.
Well, I will give them what they want, but just verbally, do I have to fill out the form?
Yes, because how come you gave it to that tenant and not this other tenant?
Okay, got it.
That makes you discriminating. See how that worked? So
Patty,
you
I'm
want to
gonna-
make sure you have a request for reasonable accommodations in the file, because that is what's going to save you from a discriminatory lawsuit saying that you aren't complying with fair housing rules and regulations. So you want to make sure that everybody has a request for reasonable accommodations that has a reasonable accommodation. And remember, an accommodation is you changing the rules. It could be for when someone's rent's due. Okay, based on a disability. It could be anything that you're doing to change the rules for one tenant. If you're not doing it for all of them, you gotta have a request for reasonable accommodations in the file. It just helps protect you from fair housing if they come after you at a later date. And I don't like fair housing. They're great when they're for me, but when they're against me, I'm not a happy camper. They have big teeth. So I think there was one other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, photos. So one of the things that I see on a lot of people's paperwork is that they must provide a photo for the file. There's not enough verbiage there. You need to add some, okay? Yes, we want a photo of the animal. But does that make it a rule or a requirement? I tell you why I want a photo of the animal in the tenant's file, because if that animal bites someone, I want somebody to be able to pick out that animal in a lineup so I know who to go after, okay? But the reason that you want a photo of this animal, the reason you want a photo of this animal for the file is in the event of a crisis, you know which animal goes with which unit. Example, we have a huge earthquake, everybody's windows get blown out in the earthquake, and now you got all these animals all over the place. At least you know which animal goes with which unit. You have a photo documentation of it. Okay, so that's why we want that photograph, is in the event of an emergency, we need to identify which animal goes with which unit. Okay, what if there's a huge fire? We need to open doors and rescue animals. We need to know who has one and who doesn't. See how that worked? Okay, the photo helps you in a lineup in the event of a bite, but we can't tell them that. That's not why we want this. We want this so that we can help protect that animal and associate it with that unit in the event of a crisis, a fire, a flood, an earthquake. We need to know which unit goes with which dog goes with which unit, so we know where to give those animals back to in the event of a crisis. I mean, it can happen at any given time. So that's the reason you want the photo if you're asking. Can I specifically deny marijuana plants without a non-agriculture disclosure? No, you can't. Do you want to know why? I know I'm going to get a lot of crap from this, and it's so hard for some people to understand. And I'm actually teaching a class on marijuana at the Apartment Association of California Southern Cities. Marijuana is just as legal as beer in the state of California. Okay, you got that? So if they can have beer and wine in their fridge, they can have marijuana sitting on their coffee table, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's legal. Okay? Where you can do something about it is when they start smoking it and the smell offends other people, or they're growing it and the smell offends other people. That's where it can become a little bit different. Okay? So it has to do with right to quiet enjoyment. As far as the smell goes of growing it, smoking it, etc. And And the best way to implement that is to have a non-smoking policy at your community, non-smoking of anything, anywhere on the community, not even in your car, in the parking garage, not on the property. And if you do that, you don't need to have a smoking section. Also, if you have a multifamily community, please know that legislation has been governing to change laws in multifamily dwellings for quite some time now. If I had to guess, I would tell you within the next 2 years, and that's me guessing. So God only knows, like, you never know. Could happen tomorrow, could happen 5 years from now. We're gonna see a law that restricts smoking in multifamily communities in the state of California. They're gonna make it so all multifamily communities are non-smoking. And if you aren't non-smoking when that law drops, you're gonna be in a world of hurt. So start making those modifications now to convert your building to non-smoking. And remember, not smoking is non-smoking of anything, okay? Marijuana, cigarettes, hookah.
Patty,
Yes.
95% of my tenants, they are older people and they cannot do without smoking. If I ever do that, they're all gonna leave.
Here's the reality of that. They don't have to smoke it to get high. And I'm sorry, I should have used a different terminology there. They don't have to smoke it to reap the benefits of the marijuana that they're using medically, okay? They can ingest it. They can rub it on in a cream. They have pills now, pills of cannabis.
I was talking about cigarette smoking.
Oh, cigarette smoking, they're gonna pass it, and that's why, is because there's such a thing now called secondhand smoke and thirdhand smoke. Thirdhand smoke's no joke. But if they're smoking and you got a multifamily unit, I'm telling you, start making the changes now, because they will pass that law. And if I had to guess, I would say anytime between now and the next 2 years. They're going to make non-smoking in multifamily communities, because if you have a child or a baby in one unit, that child or the pregnant mom or whomever, the person that has asthma, is also living in the same community with smokers, and that's coming through the air ducting system. It's traveling through neighboring walls. It's coming in. It's coming into their units. Just like we can smell marijuana smoke, we can smell cigarette smoke. So what happens with secondhand smoke is people inhale it and they smell that smoke, and it can make people that are susceptible to it very ill. Small children, people with asthma, compromised immune systems, whatever it may be. Here's the trick on it, okay? Thirdhand smoke, you know how smoke leaves a residue on the wall and you get that yellow staining? That actually emits the carcinogens that are in the cigarette smoke for years after that residue is sitting on that wall. So that's thirdhand smoke, okay? So somebody smokes in a unit, you paint the unit and you put a new carpet and boom, now it's not a smoking unit. Yes, it is. Did you clean out the AC ducting filtration system? Yada, yada, yada. So that thirdhand smoke can resurface and cause a problem for your resident that is susceptible to it. I saw another question come through. Let me see if I can grab it. Is non-smoking on the property inside or backyard rule legal? Non-smoking on the premises is legal. You're welcome. No smoking anywhere on the premises, not outside in a common area, not in the parking garage. Just, we are a non-smoking community. This is a non-smoking premises. That stops them from smoking marijuana, smoking crack, smoking cigarettes. It's not smoking. Okay. Be careful not to use the word smoke-free. Don't advertise this is a smoke-free property, because if you have barbecues, you're in violation and they're going to hang you with it. So you can use this is a non-smoking property, but don't use the word smoke-free. That will get you sued all day long and twice on Sunday, because when the neighbor's house burns down and the smoke comes over the top of your resident, guess what? They're going to come after you. This is a smoke-free property. You lied. I'm suing you now. See how that works? So don't use smoke-free. It's a poor choice of words and they will use it against you. Non-smoking or no smoking community is completely acceptable. Just don't use the words smoke-free. If you have a fireplace, you're already in violation of your own little conundrum there, along with barbecues and things like that. So just don't use smoke-free. Somebody have a question?
Yes, I have one. I got a tenant that I need to evict, but she's in LA County.
Why
It's
do you
not-
need to evict her?
She's a tenant from here.
Okay, hey, we all have them sometimes. What's she doing?
Oh, well, it's well, here lately she's been late on her rent. I don't want to evict her for non-payment of rent. Her being late on her rent is not. I know that it's not COVID related, But
What else is she doing?
well, she's been hassling about taking in doing a sublease, which is not allowed.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a material breach of her lease and a violation that you could evict for. Is she behind on her rent?
Yes, she's $1,000
In LA
behind.
County, don't touch it with a 10-foot pole
That-
unless
that's-
you're gonna
that's-
evict her for
okay.
not paying the rent. Don't do it. So here's my opinion to you, not my advice, because I'm not an attorney. I can't give advice. And hang on a second, Jay, I'll come back and answer more questions about third-hand smoke, because I see you have questions now. And I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? The
We're talking
tenant?
about
Okay.
LA County. I cannot reverse
June
it.
30th is the last day that COVID's going to protect her.
Okay.
You're welcome. On July 1st, and everybody, please pay attention to me because I don't see them extending this again. This is going to end, okay? So on July 1st, when the rent is due and it's not paid on July 2nd, all of you need to serve a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit and start the eviction on non-payment of rent for the month of July. And only July. All of COVID is protected. July is not. Everybody with me?
That sucks.
Well,
So how
the
do you recoup the money that you lost? I mean, there's no guarantee.
it's going to actually, you can apply. April will tell us there's plenty of places to apply in LA County for the funds where they're paying, the government is paying landlords to keep tenants in the property through June. Housingiskey.com set that up. April has more information on it. I saw she sent me a message and she's going to do a little bit more research on us of who has the programs and how do we apply for them. But there's all these assistance programs out right now so that we don't evict. The problem is simply as I can explain it, we're 78% tenant occupied in the state of California. So they are 3/4 of the vote. We're the minority. Okay. With that being said, 60% of all tenants in California have not paid their rent because of COVID. They're determining now that between 15 and 20% of that actually have a need. And the other ones, well, they're just exercising their rights. So what we're starting to see now is the landlord is applied for the money and the tenant, well, they don't want it.
Oh.
They don't want to apply for the money because they're scared they're going to get their ass handed to them because they weren't ever affected. They were just exercising their rights.
So that's fraud.
So exactly. So now when you have a tenant that says, oh, I'm not going to apply, my first thought is get them out, start the eviction. Start the eviction because it's going to take you 6 months to get them evicted anyway. Start it now because they were yanking your chain this whole time. And now they don't want to play and get the government into their business to get that free money because they were lying. Go figure.
Okay.
So
what about if
we're
the
going to
lease is
see a
already
lot.
up?
We're going to see a lot of tenants going, oh, I can't apply with the government. I don't want them in my business. I don't like the government. I'm an illegal immigrant. You're going to start hearing all kinds of crap of why the tenant can't apply. Yes, they can. They just don't want to.
One more question. Now,
Okay,
the
this one's going to
tenant
cost you $1.
Okay, the tenant is no longer on the lease. Her occupancy now is month to month. Am
Okay.
am I allowed to evict her? I can give her notice to, am I allowed to give her notice to vacate?
No.
No.
We can only give a notice to vacate for cause. Owner wants to move back in, has a family member that wants to move back in. We can't just want our units back. And I'm going to be extremely honest with you, and don't shoot the messenger, okay?
Okay.
In Senate Bill 91, which is currently what governs and controls us, it expires on June 30th. They put 2 pages of retaliatory issues in that Senate bill, charging landlords anywhere from $500 to $2,500 in fines and fees for retaliatory issues. Okay, you with me? Some of
Yes.
those fines can be implemented monthly. So if you did a rental increase during the pandemic when we weren't allowed to do a rent increase, you could be fined by the court $2,500 per month that you collected that additional rent. Ouch.
Mm.
No rent increases, no late fees, don't terminate tenancy without cause. And here's what's going to happen. I have a feeling we're going to hear from Fair Housing, and they're going to say, because we had a global pandemic, it's retaliatory for you to terminate tenancy within 6 months. Come on, if it's retaliatory if they have bed bugs, it's retaliatory if they call Fair Housing, it's retaliatory if they call code enforcement. Why in the hell wouldn't a global pandemic fall in that category?
Yeah.
If that's the case, you guys, to be extremely safe and ethical and make sure that we're running our business where we can't get attacked at all because of the COVID pandemic, I'm going to tell you right now, don't do a damn thing till January 1st of 2022. Don't increase rents, don't terminate tenancy, don't do anything until then. That would be 6 months after the pandemic entered, and then they possibly couldn't cry retaliatory. Okay? I know you don't like what I just told you, but that would be the ultimate erring on the side of caution. If you want to increase rents, call your legal counsel, because they're the ones that's going to stand next to you in a court battle. They're the ones that's going to be with you in a court battle. So contact them, take your direction for them. I'm telling you, the best business practice with the least amount of resistance and kickback is going to be to wait till January 1st of 2022 to do a rent increase or to terminate tenancy without cause. And April's sending us messages, you guys. I see them in the bottom. April says, here are the links for the rental housing. Does everybody see that? www.longbeach.gov, LB, she put it
No.
on there. It's
see
in
it.
the chat chain. So if you guys click on chat, let me see what it says on my screen. Where did I go? Go to more, click on chat. You should be, I think I only sent them to you. Let me see if I can send it. Copy. Hold on, you guys. I'm pasting. I'm trying. Okay, can you guys see that on the thing?
No, I can't see it.
You guys can't see it. I suck at this. I'm sorry. I'm gonna put it on my website, so it'll be up there afterward.
Okay.
I don't see how I do it, you
Oh,
guys. I'll learn.
It just showed up. It just showed up.
Okay, there it is. It's on the bottom of the screen. So that's how you get the money in LA County. And I was having major issues with connecting and I missed a lot. Is there any way on today's topic? Yes. Not a problem, Anna. The replay should be up there probably tomorrow. Third hand smoke. Can a new tenant sue you? Should we disclose to the new tenant after painting? A new tenant can sue you for third hand smoke, just so you know. I would contact a restoration company if you had a heavy smoker in a property and have them clean out the AC ducts, the heating ducts, all that stuff. They have the equipment to do that. And then you would be less likely to get involved in a lawsuit regarding third hand smoke. It's that AC unit that seems to trap the majority of it. Are we required to take applications to rent when the property is not ready to rent? No, that's up to you. April posted another one for the LA City link, you guys. I'm gonna try to copy LA Cities down in the bottom
that.
here. You guys see that one too?
Yes.
Okay. She's trying. I love her, man. This girl knows her stuff. Well, I send her on a mission and she goes and figures it all out and reports back to me. God love her. This is where this is happening and this is where that's happening. And April, I don't know if you're in a position where you can unmute yourself, but I'd like you to share how much LA County, I got you. How much delinquent rents did you have during COVID and how much is your delinquent rents now? You guys, this girl, she ain't no joke, man. Rent collection is her area of expertise, I'm telling you.
Hi, Patty. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I
So
think
how much were your delinquent rents in the beginning in COVID before you started?
it was
correct?
bad. It was bad. It was like probably about 70,000, and now we're down to 26 or 25.
From 70,000 down to 25,000.
Yes.
Damn. Now that's
Yeah.
the girl you want working for you. Okay. I'm just saying.
And
She
I also
She
I also
chases
got
the money.
yes. I also got a couple people. I did a cash for keys suggestion, and I got a couple people out when they owed about $5,000 in the beginning of COVID.
Hey, cash for keys works.
Yeah.
Oh, so
So
I
it-
can't offer cash for keys to get the property back.
You can offer cash for keys. I wouldn't put anything in writing. If they
Nope.
vacate, so does your problem.
Oh, that's kind of underhanded, don't you?
No, it's not. If they're willing to take $5,000 to get out.
Oh, no, when
Bye-bye.
you say don't put it in writing. Okay, all right. Now I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Yes, cash for keys. I'll forgive your past due balance and pay you $5,000 to be out in 30 days.
Okay.
Some
Yes,
people
And you
Is
can
some-
get them out. You can get them out. It takes a while, but after they get up there, about $5,000, they start wondering how they're going to pay it back. So it is possible. And honestly, I didn't have to pay $5,000. I just said I would give you your security deposit back, give you 30 days, which is a month free rent, and you'll have your check the same day you move out, as long as I have keys in hand.
and you forgave the past due balance, I'm assuming.
We did.
So technically you gave them $5,000. You just didn't
Yeah.
give them an additional $5,000.
Exactly. So
And sometimes you do have to give them additional funds. Something that I want to point out to you guys when you're considering cash for keys offers, whether you're a sales agent doing cash for keys or whether you're a property manager trying to utilize cash for keys to limit your exposure, liability, and stop the bleeding. Here's what I could tell you. You must be the owner of record, a licensed sales agent, or a real estate broker, or an attorney to negotiate a cash for keys deal. It is a real estate transaction. So you want to be very careful that you're not practicing real estate without a license, okay? Very important. Number 2, do not give them any money until they are standing at the unit and trading you keys for the property. They're going to say, oh, give me 2,000 now. I need to put that down as a deposit somewhere. Don't play the game. You're done. No, you get the money when you give me the keys. That's how this works. It's a trade. It's a trade. Okay. So don't let them suck money out of you before they go, because that doesn't work. Okay. And I'm letting you know now, if you do a cash for keys agreement, it is unethical for you to then go after back rents the tenants owe you. So just saying. Okay, hold on. I got questions from Anna. I never enforced renter's insurance. Is it okay to start requiring for new residents? I'm under rent control, so I'm not allowed to enforce it on existing residents, correct? You're absolutely correct, Anna. Can't have any changes under rent control, but you can require new residents moving in that they have renter's insurance. I also strongly recommend, I can't use another word because then it sounds like legal advice, so I'm being careful. I strongly recommend that you add either your management company, the owner of record, the property management company, somebody as an additional insured or interested party on their policy. That way, if the tenant doesn't pay their premium and they get a notice that they're going to be canceled, you as an additional insured or interested party also get that notification. So now you can serve them a 3-day curable breach of covenant. They're in violation of their rental agreement because their insurance is going to be canceled. See how that worked? And for those of us that manage property for profit and we're managing owners' properties, please have your management company listed as an additional insured or interested party on your owner's policy. So that if they're out of town on vacation and there's a flood in the property, you can file a claim or start the claim. You are additional insured or interested party. You can do that either way for your owners. So here's who should be connected in this with your insurance, just so you know. All of your owners, all of your tenants, and all of your vendors. Everybody got that? You should be listed as an additional insured or interested party for your vendors, your owners, and your tenants. And it's a lot of work, I know, but damn, when something goes wrong, it is nice to know that you have that protection. If anyone needs to know what links to apply for and what jurisdiction, please let me know. So April is volunteering, you guys. If somebody needs to know how they apply for the free money from the government, she's willing to hunt it down for you. She's located there in the LA area. She's in LA County, but she's in some surrounding areas as well. And this girl likes to chase money. Graylin, do HOA rules matter about dogs? What if the HOA has a rule for dogs? For example, dogs need to be registered for HOA, must be on a leash in common areas and below a certain weight, etc. Here's the thing. It might not be a dog. It could be a lizard. It could be a bird. It could be a kangaroo. I mean, it could be anything. So I believe that your HOA is going to have to take the same request for reasonable accommodations that you did. Just like your insurance company has to accept the same request for reasonable accommodations that you did in the event there's an aggressive breed dog.
All right, you come on.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to end us for today, unless you guys have something you desperately need to talk about. Anybody? Anybody? Nothing? I got nothing? How many emotional support animals can a tenant have? Well, it depends on what the city's regulations are. If the city says you can only have 2 dogs and 1 cat per household, then that is your rule. Not your rule, the city's rule. So you're implementing the city's rule. So if they have more than 1 animal, they need a note for each animal, or the note needs to specify for 2 animals or whatever the note is. That's number 1. So each animal requires documentation from a licensed professional in the industry aware of their medical condition. Why did I say it like that? Because it doesn't have to be from a doctor. It could be a life coach, a marital coach, a property manager that's a licensed sales agent, a broker, anybody that is licensed professional that's aware of their need and their medical condition can write that note. I'm a licensed professional. I'm a broker. I could write you a note. Do you need one? Okay, that's how that works. My tenant left in January. How many ESA animals can they have? It depends on what the city's guidelines are, and make sure that you have a separate note for each animal. Okay, my tenant left in January owing $4,000. Can I apply to the government for 80% recovery? I don't know where the tenant is. No, you cannot. Let me explain something to you about that, but let me answer Anna's question first. Where do I get rules for emotional support animals for the city of LA? You're not going to get rules for emotional support animals. It's going to be under animal control, and they're looking at it as a pet. Okay, it's an animal. To them, they don't care. So it's how many pets are in that community. So you're just going to call animal control either from the city or the county. Remember, they both govern you. So they're going to tell you what their rules are for animals or pets on a property. Same rules apply, okay? My tenant left in January owing $4,000. So let me explain this to you guys, okay? The reason the government, and here we'll get real deep into bureaucracy and bullshit, okay? The reason the government in California has decided to pay 80% of a tenant's past due rent and have the landlord forgive 20% is because if they don't do anything in the state of California, we as landlords are going to make half of the state homeless within the next 6 months. You watch. Okay. So because they didn't want us as landlords, because we're evicting fiends. I don't know if you guys know this, but in LA County right now, there's so many evictions going on. It takes 6 months to do an uncontested eviction. Ouch. 6 months. And that's if they don't fight you. Okay. The courts are inundated right now because all of us are bleeding. So think about it this way. What's the government doing to help the restaurants or the hair salons or the nail salons? They're not doing anything. They're only helping independent landlords. And it's so that we keep that tenant in place and don't evict them. Chances are before you get that check, there will be something in that fine print for you taking that money stating that you won't terminate the tenancy without cause for the next 6 months. I guarantee you it's going to be in there. The whole idea of them giving this 80% is to keep tenants in the property so they're not homeless. So if they've already vacated, that isn't your avenue. Your avenue is small claims court, but you cannot file a case in small claims court until August 1st of this year. That is when the COVID rents are allowed to be implemented in small claims court for any COVID rents. So if you have somebody that moved out or is moving out right now and they owe COVID rent money, you can't take that out of their deposit. That's retaliatory. Okay. You can only sue them in small claims court in August for rent that happened during the protected period from March 1st to June 30th. Unless the tenant signs and agrees in writing that you can take the money out of their security deposit. Otherwise, you have no recourse but to sue them in small claims. And just so that you know, don't shoot the messenger, but that debt is unassignable. What do I mean by that? It's now considered consumer debt and is no longer landlord-tenant debt. That way you will never, ever, ever, 7 times never be able to evict them on that rent money, ever. You can only sue them in small claims court. It is also unassignable consumer debt. What does that mean in English? It means that you can't give it to a debt collection agency or your attorney to handle the collection of that debt for you. You as the landlord must get the writ of execution and the wage garnishment and do all of that yourself to get that money that is owed to you. So with that being said, we're going to see a lot more legal counsel offering services, helping you get those documents in order, helping you get that writ of execution filed with the sheriff's department so that you can garnish the wages. So we're going to see more help from collection agencies regarding COVID debt, but reality is it's unassignable, meaning you as the landlord are the only one that can call to collect or implement a wage garnishment or something along those lines. So it makes that money really difficult to try to go after. And you also need to know that all the tenant needs to do is file bankruptcy and that money's gone. Yeah. Don't shoot me, okay? I'm just telling you like it is. I'm teaching a class on Friday called The Most Common Scams in Property Management currently. And my number one subject is COVID, because that's the biggest scam ever, right? I mean, it's put us all in a bind. It's put us all in a bad predicament. I mean, we're all not in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. Some of us are on a kayak and some of us are in a yacht, but we're all in the same storm and we've all been affected by it in very different ways. I had an owner call a couple weeks ago, actually it was a couple months ago, and say to me, Patty, I need to evict my tenant. They're not going to pay me this month's rent. It's February. And I said, okay, why are we evicting them? Well, the mom died of COVID in January. Okay. And in February, the dad died of COVID. And I know they're not going to pay me. Well, who's still left in the property? The 3 minor children, one's 17, one's 14, and one's 7. That's someone that's truly been affected by this pandemic. You want to evict them? Sometimes I have problems taking my emotional self out of the equation, so I get you guys, because that one was hard for me to swallow. You have 3 minor children that are about to become a ward of the state if a family member doesn't come in and take them. They've lost both their parents, and now you want to kick them out of their house? I have an issue with that. That is someone that has genuinely been affected by this pandemic and isn't trying to take advantage of the situation like most of our tenants. Let's be honest. So remember, there are true actual victims of this pandemic. Not everybody's trying to be shisty and shady and just take advantage of the system. Okay, please remember that there is people that genuinely have a need, that were genuinely affected by this. Okay, please, I can't stress that enough. I get the majority of us have tenants that were like, oh no, they're batshit crazy. They've been working the whole time. They just don't want to pay me. We all have those. Okay. But please remember that there are some people out there that truly have been affected by this pandemic. And we need to be mindful of that so that we don't just put them all in the same category as someone exercising their rights. Okay. Please remember that people have been affected by this in bad ways.
Yeah, I have tenants and property owners that's been affected by this. Tenants
We've all
that-
been affected. We've all been affected. If our
But
tenants
it
aren't
does-
paying the rent, now we're affected. See how
Right,
that
well,
worked?
Yeah, but see what I'm saying is as a property management, man, I'm getting complaints from the owner and complaints from the tenant. And it's basically because of COVID, because they got 2 people hurt. What do you do?
I completely and totally understand. And I think April will go to bat for me here when I say when the beginning of this pandemic happened, I told everybody, if you're a regional manager or higher, reach out to your staff. It's your property managers that are taking the brunt of this pandemic. They're getting it from landlords, they're getting it from their supervisors, and they're getting it from the tenants. Nobody's telling them what a great job they're doing or how wonderful everything is. Everybody's bitching and screaming at him. We as property managers are taking the brunt of it. We as landlords are taking the brunt of it because we can't make the mortgage if the tenant doesn't pay us. They're not paying us and they don't have to. I never thought in a million years the government would rewrite our written contracts as to when our rent is due. Never, ever in a million years did I ever think that would happen. I mean, in my opinion, that is communism. They are telling us when our rent is due, but we still have to make our mortgage.
Yes.
Bullshit. Bullshit. That
Yeah,
is
and
so
I
wrong.
do that when I got clients that depend on that income. That's their life.
Exactly. I have people that I know that have spent their life savings in real estate, and that's how they make it every month. I get it. It's the domino effect, but that's the why this government is giving landlords 80%. It's to keep the tenants in the property. Because you guys, they're right. I mean, I don't need to tell you. If you could evict for non-payment of rent right now, would you be in court?
Oh, yes.
Yep. We all would. So by them paying that 80%, all they're trying to do is stop us as landlords from making half the state homeless, because there's a whole nother group of us that have a vacant unit right now and we're sitting on it. We're not putting it back up for rent. We're sitting on our vacant units because we're scared to death that the new person coming in is going to cry COVID and not pay us until June. So those of us that have already done an eviction, Okay. A lot of them are sitting on their houses. So when your tenant comes to you and says, I can't find anywhere to move to, know that they're probably not lying. Okay. They're probably being extremely honest with you. If you want to see what I'm talking about, look in your community and see what's for rent, single family residence wise. When they tell you there's no place to go, they're probably right. We as landlords are trying to band-aid our financial bleeding, and that is how we're trying to do it. A lot of other ones just sell them. Sell. Tuck tail and bail. Everything's high as it could possibly be. We're running with the money. And I get it, but I mean, that's what's happening. So when your tenant tells you that they can't, City of San Diego, hold on, where do I get rules for emotional support animals for the City of San Diego? It's not a city. Hold on. If you're asking about the rules regarding animals in the City of San Diego, call animal control. How many animals are allowed per household within city limits? That's the question you ask your city animal control. We're not talking about emotional support animals because they don't care. They don't care if it's an emotional support animal or if it's 10 emotional support animals. You have to follow their rules. So we just want to find out what their rules are regarding animals on a property. Do they have a weight limit, a size limit, breed restrictions? You guys paying attention? So things you want to ask animal control when you call them. How many animals are allowed in a single family residence in your city? How about a multifamily residence in your city? How about weight restrictions on a multifamily residence in your city? You'll see the city of Riverside, I believe, says that in a multifamily dwelling, no animal can be over 30 pounds. But that's the city of Riverside's rule. So that now becomes your rule because you have to enforce the city's guidelines. Because if you're in violation of them, who do they come after? Us. We're not having that. No, not today. So find out what the rules are. You're going to call animal control in the city, and then you can also call in the county. Things you want to ask. Do you have any breed restrictions? Do you have any weight restrictions? How many animals are allowed on a property? Multifamily and single family residence. There's a difference and you need to know them both. Some cities just say 2 dogs and 1 cat per household. Okay, well, then there's your rule. So you don't want to call them necessarily and say, I want rules on emotional support animals, because they're going to go, what are you talking about? It's just an animal in a residential dwelling. They don't look at it as anything but. Okay, you got that? And remember, emotional support animals are considered wheelchairs. It's a very easy way for us to put into perspective what can happen and what can't happen. Is that's an assistive device for a disabled person. No different than a hearing aid, no different than crutches, no different than a wheelchair, okay? Same governing laws protect them. Everybody got that? That's the biggest one I could give you, okay? Does anybody have anything else they need to discuss? Yes, Anna, I did get your comfort animal package. I have it in my hand. I have 3 changes for it. 3. If you want to know what they are right now, I would be more than happy to tell you. But I'd rather tell you in person. Tell you now, okay? Page 1 is your assistance, animal support, and request for reasonable accommodations. This one that I'm holding basically explains, sorry, you guys, it explains what an emotional support animal is or a service animal is. And that you're asking for a request for one, and then it has the back. I don't have any changes on there. The one that you have, where is your assistive animal agreement, okay? 2 things I caught. One is right here. This isn't in line and it doesn't have a paragraph number. It should, okay? It just kind of stands out. So it's just, this isn't a correction. This is a typo, okay? But see how this verbiage sticks out and it doesn't have a number. It needs to be numbered and be in line, okay? And then on your service companion agreement, this one, service, I know it's backwards for you, but it's the short page is the best way I could describe it. Where it says photo, a photo must be provided for file. I would just add an asterisk. This is for identification purposes in the event of an emergency. What animal belongs to what unit? Okay, so the reason you want a picture is to help protect against a crisis, earthquake, fire, flood, anything can happen. Animals could be running everywhere. You need to know which one goes where. Okay, that's why you want a photo. But you can also use them as a police lineup. But I would just add that under photo where it says photo is required. I would add in there that this is for identification purposes in the event of an emergency. Okay, and I didn't have any changes on any of the rest of the documentation. So one page, it's just a move over. And the other one is just to add why you want a photo. And that's just to help protect you. Other than that, your docs look okay. You got that, Anna? And if you need me to, we can always talk about it more. And there's one in here that says that the resident must keep the animal leashed or harnessed or in a carrier and under complete control of a responsible person at all times when outside of the unit. That's number 3. My question to you becomes, do you have a leash law in your city? Because if you don't, you can't say that. You can't have any rules. So that's my only other one. And that was number 3 on the assistant animal agreement. Okay, anybody have anything else for me? Otherwise, I'm gonna call it a day and send you guys on your way. And be prepared for tomorrow, folks. It's gonna get interesting, I'm sure. No problem, Anna.
Thank you, Patty.
No worries. And you guys keep your head on a swivel tomorrow, please. It's April Fool's Day. And for the life of me, every April Fool's, something crazy happens. So I'm just telling you guys, be prepared. I'll share a quick story with you and then I'll say goodbye to everybody. Years ago, was working with a property management company. I was a regional manager. One of my property managers had to go home on an emergency, whatever. They went home sick. They couldn't do their move-in. Okay, I'll do it. So I grabbed the paperwork and I hot tail it over to the property. I'm already 30 minutes late, so this isn't looking great. On the side of the management company, I explained that she had an emergency and needed to leave, and I'm stepping in and I'm here to help them. So I went through, I did the move-in, I did the walkthrough inspection, a 47-page lease contract, go through everything, get to the end. And then I realized there was no note on there saying whether or not he paid the deposit in the first month's rent. So I asked him, did you pay the deposit in the first month's rent already? And he goes, yeah, I sure did. And I said, oh, okay. So I moved him in. He had not. I didn't collect any money from him, and he is now in possession of the unit. I don't have rent and I don't have a deposit. Oops. Oops. Ugh. So I called him and I said, I know it's April Fool's Day and all, but no, we don't have any money on file for you. And unless you want me to do my job, which I'm really good at, I can start an eviction and have you evicted here in a rapid fashion, or you could just come in and pay the money that you owe so I don't have to do that. You pick. So just saying, you may want to think about that just a little bit. Okay, just a little bit. All right, you guys, be careful. April Fools, always something crazy, right? Have a great day. If you need me, you know how to hunt me down. And I will see you guys next week for sure. And I'm excited. We're getting closer to June. I want July here so bad. You have no idea. I think everything will be back to normal in July, and fingers crossed, you guys, they give us our 3-day notices back. Fingers crossed. They've been trying to implement those 15-day notices for several years, and we've always beat them in legislation. This time they threw it at us. So I'm hoping that we're able to take that back. I want to be able to serve you a 3-day pay rent or quit. This 15-day notice is bureaucracy and bullshit at its finest. I mean, come on. A 15-day notice turns into a 25-day notice like that with just a couple holidays and a few weekends. And now the whole month's gone and I can finally file the paperwork to evict you. It's bullshit. I can't stand it. It's ludicrous. So hopefully you guys, knock on wood, we get our 3-day notices to pay rent or quit back. They've been trying to implement these 15-day notices for quite some time now. This may make that stick. I don't know yet, but we'll find out on or before July 1st. I promise. All right, you guys have a great week. If you need me, hunt me down. Bye.